Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Joe, for inviting me to speak today. So I've got a fairly interesting topic that we've had very little in the news lately about drug supply, so I think I'll try to get some interest here. But the title is Pharmaceuticals from Warehouse to Patient. Who cares? And so with that, I'd like to ask Dr. Stuart Madden to come up. Anyway, listen, I think from my perspective, depending on whether you care is really all about how you interpret the actual question itself. The supply chain itself is going through tremendous change over the last little while, and I think we've got to go through a lot more as we move into the future. As we actually start to look at the supply chain itself, I think it's really important for us to take a look at the statistics of what's happening right now in the drug world, in the pharmaceutical development world. I think as you can see right here in this slide here, we basically have, our baby boomer population is very seriously increasing the prescription volumes. The drug consumption is obviously continuing to grow. And the aging is absolutely increasing by more than 0.5% over the last little while. As the consumption increases, so does the average age. We're living a lot longer, in part due to the drugs that we're consuming. And with age comes more need for drug delivery. So here we see the impact of age on drug consumption. The scripts per claimant has increased drastically over the last 5 years. You can see here from 2010 to 2006, the consumption for the age group from 55 through 85 plus, and we all know that that is going to continue to grow. After looking at the stats, I think it's important to understand sort of where the market's going with regards to the specific types of therapies. This slide here basically is another aspect that has changed within our supply chain. It's virtually showing where the biologics or the specialty market is continuing to increased over 30% over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And by 2014, I think what you can see here is really that the market will be split 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 between the generics brand and the specialty marketplace. With specialty comes the need for supply chain services and a change to the overall capabilities. In this slide here, in looking at the biologics side of it, and we've actually spoken to it from Russell Williams as well as from Peter already, it's basically demonstrating where the growth is coming from. Biotechnology plus specialty is really driving the future. And with that means that the changes within the supply chain, or the changes in moving drugs from the pharmaceutical companies to the patients, is obviously going to be a huge requirement as we move forward. Here we see, again, many of the products will potentially require different distribution models. We've already seen that happening. We see within my company, as well as other organizations, the need for us to actually make changes within our own structures to actually provide the types of services that are going to be required as we move forward with some of these specific products, especially in areas of oncology and other specific modes of services. All of these developments have created a need for our current distribution models to be reviewed, and reviewed extremely closely. Many of you have seen this slide before, but this is really a look at, we've looked at the pipelines, we've looked at where we're going with regards to statistics, and really here's sort of the overall look at the actual marketplace itself. The industry is a $22.5 billion market. The 3 specific channels that we needed to start to take a look at, or that we have been looking at, are sort of that direct-to-patient model, the retail channel model, as well as the one that I'm in on a day-to-day basis, and that's the hospital model. What we see here is really, if you take a look at sort of that specialty aspect, so that direct-to-patient model which includes sort of the high-priced biologics, is now bypassing the distributors and bypassing the normal retail marketplace. On the hospital side, that market has been sort of going along, not a lot of change over the last few years, but what we're actually seeing lately is that the payors, or those interested within the actual hospital environment, are now beginning to ask questions with regards to their side of the supply chain, the types of services that they're looking for as we move forward. Breaking it down even further, in looking at the 5 channels of marketing, if you look at home care, retail, long-term care, hospital, and specialty, we've talked a little bit about specialty, where it's going, the changes, the requirements, the needs for those services. In this slide here, we're actually seeing where the stakeholders are changing. So in the past, where we were actually working head-on-head with the actual pharmacists or else the physicians, here we see the need for change based on the stakeholders that we're actually speaking to on a day-to-day basis. So if you look at the long-term care market by itself, there's approximately 300,000 long-term care beds in Canada. Stats show that that is going to grow to about 800,000 long-term care beds by 2020. So the services that are going to be required for that specific market space are obviously going to be large and going to increase as we move forward. The needs for distribution facilities with potential central fills, distribution facilities with packaging capabilities, potential verification systems that are attached to your actual distribution, are all areas that are actually being looked at and discussed as we move forward today. As far as the hospital channel, where do we go with that one? As we mentioned earlier, the stakeholders are changing, the requirements are becoming more intense on a day-to-day basis. So, this slide here is basically our traditional product flow today. Fairly straightforward. Product from the manufacturer or the 3PL that's handling its products, basically being shipped to either the hospital directly or to a wholesaler, and then moved on within the channels. So there's various touch points within the actual flow. It goes to the hospital, then out to community care, home care, patient, and from that area. The interesting part of this slide, though, is that bottom left-hand side. Again, it's basically a closed-loop system. It's a closed-loop environment, and it's expanding. And again, it's bypassing that traditional pharmacy and touch points that we're actually used to on a day-to-day basis today. So, in looking at the product flow today, why don't we take a look a little bit at the product flow tomorrow? This is one aspect. This is the one area that we've actually been talking about a lot more. Individuals in my field and some of my friends that are sitting out here in the audience. It's really how do you eliminate many of the touch points within that system. So I think the future is coming down to, it's basically going to be the product, plus the stakeholder, plus the payer, and that's really what's going to be driving the change. Tightening the loop, reducing the touch points, and driving down the costs are the areas that we're actually working on a day-to-day basis as we speak. Another look at that slide, looking at it from a dollars and cents point of view, in the current model, you've basically got the manufacturer, you've got the wholesaler, so you're looking at costs on the manufacturer side. You've got the wholesaler with its markups. Then you've got the services that are combined with that. Then you've got the pharmacy or the hospital or the facility that you're actually shipping the product to. And then the patient. The future model, or the model that potentially is being discussed, or the model that you may want to be talking about, is you've got the manufacturer, you've got the services, the pharmacy, the hospital, and then the patient. You can see where the reduction in cost happens with the reduction of touch points within the actual supply chain itself. Less inventory, less markups, manufacturer direct pricing, service efficiencies through centralization, bulk stock to unit dose or compounding. So those are the types of services that potentially you'll see within the facilities, and reduce transport and logistics. Looking at this on the hospital channel, what are stakeholders asking for right now? When you look at it from a manufacturer standpoint, they're looking for a desire to maintain cradle-to-patient supply chain integrity, desire to maintain relationships at all levels. They don't want to lose the product and lose the patient at the same time. In essence, they want control. On the warehouse side or on the distributor side, what are we looking for? It's a desire to support hospitals with important medicines at the right time, at the right place. Desire to shorten the supply chain to allow efficiencies and lower cost products. From a hospital perspective, desire to deliver effective health care systems to Canadians. Desire to improve patient outcomes. At the end of the day, what are we all looking for? Data. How do you control your data? How do you own your data? What is the type of data that I can actually receive? So, in looking at who cares, we care on the warehouse side. We know that the government cares. We know that distributors care. We know pharmacy cares. We know the hospital cares. We know caregivers care. We know patients care. So therefore, I think there's a whole group of individuals who care. So at the end of the day, who cares about pharmaceuticals or drugs from manufacturer to the patient? I think we all care. The aging population will require increased services. Biologics will account for over 50% of all the new meds, as we've seen earlier. Government agencies are becoming directly involved in the supply chain. I think you're going to see alliances and partnerships that are being derived from potential competitors today, individuals that you wouldn't think would be speaking to each other. The lines between brand and generics, we've seen a little earlier on, are becoming less blurred. The patent cliff continues to increase, and additional services are required. I think your service providers, your warehouses, your distributors, your 3PLs, I think are all going to be providing new services as we move forward. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stuart Madden.